Greetings, folks. This is Brian Harris with the Independent Black Voters. Our vote is not free. We're continuing our series of getting to know our candidates. Today, I'm happy to have one of the candidates running for District Court Judge, Department 29, Attorney David Lopez-Negrete. Did I say that right?
Negrete.
Okay. My apologies. He is running. He's a young man that I'm getting to know. I want to thank you, David, for coming on.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're going to start off. Tell us a little bit about you.
Okay. Well, my campaign slogan is equal justice under the law. And I believe that each and every person who comes before the court deserves equal courtesy, respect, and consideration. And I have, over the course of my career as a public defender, fought to ensure that working class individuals, including immigrants, and the least fortunate among us get equal justice under the law. A little bit about me. I was actually born in Mexico City, lived there until I was about 7 years old, and then we moved to the States. I lived in Portland, Oregon, since about 4th grade all the way through high school. And then I went to college in New York City at NYU. After studying and working a little bit after graduation, I decided I want to get back west, and ultimately ended up going to law school at the University of Arizona in Tucson. And based on an internship that I did while I was still in my 2nd year of law school here at the PD's office in Vegas, kind of fell in love with the work, fell in love with the office and with the city. And then ultimately when I graduated, I came back to Vegas, passed the bar, and got back to work.
Okay, great, man. And you are right now in the defender's office, correct?
That's right. That's right. I've been working at the public defender's office since graduating law school, obviously a little bit before that when I was doing an internship. So I've been there for about 10 years now. About 5 years ago, I was actually promoted within the office to one of our specialty teams that handles only life sentence cases. And that's what I've been doing for the past about 5 years or so.
Okay. We have Izzy. He's not on online here, but Izzy is the owner of 702 Television.
Okay,
Izzy,
great.
can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. If you, we're going to do this interview. If you got some questions, don't hesitate to speak up.
No problem.
Okay. So obviously you're very young, and a lot of people will hold that against you. Hello, Izzy.
How old do you think I am? I get different guesses from different people. I know I look young.
Let me say mid-30s.
I'm 38 actually this year, okay. So I'm pretty close to 40.
There you go. You've aged well, my man.
Thank you. It'll pay off eventually, I hope.
I hope so too. So, but again, that's a good deal. But again, people look at that and sometimes they'll hold that against you. Are you going against? Is it a sitting judge or?
Correct.
Okay.
He's the incumbent judge.
Mm-hmm. Tell me in your words why you think that you would be more qualified and a better fit to be in that position than the incumbent.
I think in this case, you know, I'm really more running for me than instead of against somebody. And so what I think is important that I bring to the bench is this diversity of experience, right? And diversity of perspective. We don't have that many public defenders get elected to the bench. And I think it's something that's lacking. I think it's something that would obviously help to balance out the bench, to have our perspective in actually the decision-making seat. And that's something that I've been doing for 10 years. The other thing that's important is that public defense work is pretty intense. We handle a high volume caseload, and we have to learn basically trial by fire kind of way. And so we gain a lot of experience in the office. We're in court almost every day. We're going to trial all the time. And we function as lead counsel. And so 10 years at the PD's office is a lot of experience. It may not seem like it, but when you're working the type of cases that we do, which are some of the most difficult, you gain a lot of experience in a shorter amount of time. But the perspective that I'm bringing is fighting for people who are disadvantaged, people who don't have financial clout, political clout, people who don't have advantages built in to their home lives and things like that. And I think it's important that people on the bench who are making decisions about a lot of these persons actually have personal experience representing some of them, representing working class individuals. So that's what I'm bringing to the table. And that's why I think it's important to put people like me on the bench.
Great. There are a lot of defenders running this year, and I'm happy to say that we needed more balance. We needed to have people who actually saw the other side of the coin versus law and order, lock them up.
Right, absolutely.
There's a lot going on today. Obviously, you have the Black Lives Matter, you have the now discussion of systemic racism tied with that. And give me your opinion on what you think is going on and your opinion on the whole Black Lives Matter movement. This is not you as a judge. Okay. This is you, David, as a personal view.
Right. Obviously, I support the Black Lives Matter movement. I think it's, you know, I watch stand up, and I think it's Michael Che who has a bit about Black Lives Matter, where he's talking about how, you know, the statement Black Lives Matter shouldn't be so controversial, because it's literally just asking people to value Black lives as much as everybody else's. You know, it's kind of crazy that it becomes a flashpoint culturally, when ultimately what we want is to make sure that everybody is treated equally, right? And that's basically what my whole career has been about. And that's why my campaign slogan is equal justice under the law. And I think that Black Lives Matter is trying to bring back that idea. You know, I think we need to work at making equality a reality. It's not something that obviously has happened on its own. And I think it's important that we listen to people who are being treated unfairly. And I think it's important that we keep our focus on that. So I think it's a good movement. I think it's important, obviously, also to try to unify people. We don't want to divide everybody. There's already enough division out there. And so I think if we come back to the idea of equality, and that ultimately is the reason why we're all Americans, because we believe in that ideal, I think that should bring people together. And I think that's how I see the Black Lives Matter movement, moving us forward, bringing us all back together to be committed to equality.
Absolutely. And we're in agreement there, because the truth of the matter is, if we want to be America that we tell the world we are, we have to start treating all people, both Black folks, immigrants, everybody, with the same respect and equal justice and opportunity under the law, because systemic racism is not just about police brutality. Systemic racism is about a fixed playing field where certain people always win and certain people always lose.
Right.
And when we start to realize and admit it, we will start to see everybody, not just Black folks, but everyone rise with the tide. So I appreciate your commentary there, because that is very important. Knowing the law, people know the law. Knowing their heart, that's part of what we do here with the independent Black voters, is we talk to you to get to know you. We talk to you to understand your values and beliefs. I like the fact that you have a very diverse background. You know, you grew up, you were born in Mexico,
right,
and you lived in Portland. You know, you're obviously not one of the people that our president talks about that's coming over here with all this negativity. It's similar to what's dealt with when with other folks, that we're painted in a negative brush, while we actually bring much positivity to this country. And that's a major problem here. So that's my commentary. Now I'm going to come back and tell you and ask you, you gave me a little bit about your desires. What are your strengths? What do you think are your major strengths if you were to come in and win and be judge of Department 29? And what are some of the changes you'd like to immediately see and happen?
I think some of my strengths have to do with having an open mind. You know, in my job, you have to get to know people that you wouldn't otherwise meet, right? I get to see people from all walks of life, and obviously people who are way more disadvantaged than I am and way more disadvantaged than a lot of people. So I think having that kind of personal experience dealing with people like that from different backgrounds, and trying to help them, I think that's really important, because to be able to see that from the perspective of a defender and then to see it from the perspective of a judge, you get to always remember the humanity in the people that are coming before the court. And this goes back to the idea of giving everybody equal respect, courtesy and consideration. So I think that's one of the strengths. I think also, like I've been talking about, being a public defender, you acquire a wealth of courtroom experience, right? You go to trial a lot. You get to function as lead counsel, where you are the attorney who is responsible for the case, for trial strategy, for basically investigation, all that kind of stuff. So the type of work that you do in the public defender's office really trains you to run a courtroom calendar and to understand the functions of being able to render decisions, being able to consider obviously different positions on an issue, and then ultimately being able to be fair. Okay, I think that's basically the strengths that I'm bringing to it. Being obviously a Spanish speaker, that is also another added value that I'm bringing, being able to understand people who come from a different cultural background, you know, and who are basically living here, but really haven't had that much exposure to the way the criminal justice system works here in the US. It's important to be able to understand that somebody has a different experience, and to be able to make sure that they're understanding everything as they're going along in this system that's new to them.
Great. Now, what the responsibilities of Department 29, civil, criminal, combination of both? What is it?
It's a combination right now. It's a split docket where they have criminal cases and then also civil cases. And that's something that the chief judge of the courthouse decides.
Great. Because, I mean, one of the things, again, when you talk, and I'm going to look on the side of criminal, we need to figure out how to not just lock people up. Putting our community in jail is not the solution. And judges, even though they have some rules, but they have some discretionary leeway. Many times the leeway goes to the rich. The discretion goes to the rich, and the pointed edge of the sword goes to minorities. What are your thoughts on trying to come up with alternatives to lock them up and throw away the key? And how do we work to try to get more fairness? Because we know that the justice is not blind at this time. We know it's not blind. And one of the reasons by voting, we believe, is hopefully we can put that rag across her eyes again and become blind justice. So give me your thoughts on how you can operate to try to rehabilitate as much as you can within the law, rehabilitate versus incarcerate. Because to me, the easiest way to reduce our budgets is to become Mayberry RFD and not incarcerate so many people in jail on a constant basis.
Absolutely. I think that it's both. If we're trying to address a problem, right, there's a reason why someone ends up in court. Obviously, something went wrong along the way, okay? And that can be innocent people getting ensnared in the process too, and something went wrong in the investigation or whatever. Well, so that's important. But when we're talking about somebody who was actually found guilty or decided to plead guilty, the second question is, what's the right punishment, right? And that's something that judges have to decide. Just like you're talking about, I think that if someone is coming before the court, you need to sentence them as an individual. A sentencing determination has to be something that's completely individualized to the person in front of the judge. And so you need to be able to see them as human, and you need to be able to understand their story and to see how they actually got to where they are right now. And I think part of that is if they committed a crime and they broke a law, why did that happen? What are the solutions to that? You know, there's going to be some crimes that are extremely serious and that imprisonment is going to be appropriate. But there's a lot of crimes where it'd be more appropriate, better use of our resources, and more fair and just to try to treat the underlying problem, right? And that's when you get into the idea of rehabilitation, you know, treatment. We have a lot of people in the criminal justice system dealing with substance abuse issues and with mental health issues as well. Locking those people up is not going to treat that problem, you know, and in some cases it makes it worse. So I think we need to obviously keep our eye on the ball and make sure that we're trying to get at the root causes of why someone ends up in court. I think that is a big priority.
Just recently, the Supreme Court weighed in on the issue of bail reform. This was a major issue, especially in the Black and Brown community, because there's a direct correlation of poverty and who's in jail. If you have the money, you're out on bail. If you're in poverty, you're in jail. So they've come in and looked for bail reform. There are some judges that are still ignoring this and still following business as usual. There are obviously the detriment of what was going in the past is you had people that were innocent, but they pled to an agreement because they were held with no bail in jail so long and then negotiated, okay, if you plead to this, now we'll let you go. Give me your thoughts on bail reform and give me your thoughts on bail reform, and then we'll go to the next question.
Well, I'm extremely proud that it was our office, the PD's office here in Clark County, headed by Nancy Lemke's efforts, as well as Christy Craig's efforts, on this particular case that the Supreme Court handed down back in April. I want to say it's called Valdez-Jimenez, where it instituted a whole new process for judges to make custody determinations, right? And the court found that you have to ultimately decide if this person has to be incarcerated because there's no other way to deal with the potential for flight or with the potential for danger to the community. If there's no other way, then possibly you might require bail and to keep them in custody. But you have to obviously take in consideration the financial ability of each person. So that's, in a nutshell, what that case is about. So that's a step forward. Yes, it doesn't always happen, even after the case has been decided, that everybody gets out of jail who simply are in jail because they can't afford the bail. I think there's still more work to be done. And it's something that shouldn't happen in this country, that someone who simply can't afford the bail has to stay in jail. But if other people who are more wealthy are out, that's not right. And it shouldn't be the way that the criminal justice functions. It should be based on whether you are a flight risk and whether you're a danger to the community, not having to do anything to do with your wallet.
Right. Great. Now, here's another one, and some of this falls into the DAs, but also the judges have their discretionary look at it. One of the things I found, and this is when it comes to Black men especially, but minorities, but especially Black men, is if they are brought in, they are charged severely overcharged. They are charged to the point where something that should not have been there, but they charge them so high and they give them so many counts. Again, it's an attempt to force a person to not take their stand of pleading not guilty and say, oh, you're looking at 20 years to drive that person to take a plea when they maybe shouldn't have taken that plea. Because, you know, when you feel that you're guilty versus you're guilty until proven innocent, which many Black people do, you're forced to give up your right to be innocent until proven guilty and to be tried by my peers, because we feel like the selection of the jury is rigged. so that very few African Americans are on the juries that are supposed to be juries of our peers. The charges are enhanced, so if you lose a losing hand, you could give up your life. But on the other hand, if you look at what should have happened, if they would have had bail and they would have been charged appropriately, they may have never gone to jail. Give me your thoughts from the perspective of that and the perspective of a judge and what they can do to try to bring equal justice.
From the perspective of a judge, they're not involved in charging decisions. That's totally within the purview of the prosecuting agency. They get to decide what charges they want to file, obviously because they believe that they can prove all of them beyond a reasonable doubt and that there is a legal basis for each one. The judge really isn't involved in that. From the defense perspective, whenever I see charges that I think shouldn't be there legally, I always litigate, and I always try to file a motion and say, Judge, we have these charges that are not supposed to be there because they're duplicative. They're kind of charging the same conduct and slicing it in a very technical way. And obviously try to make these arguments as well when we're trying to get a client out of custody and say that even though this person is facing, 5 counts, it's really just one incident that we're talking about. And so don't hold that against them when making your consider your decision on custody issues. There are some very difficult decisions that clients have to make when they're looking at trial and they're looking at the risk of getting convicted. It's a very difficult situation, right? Because if you file a motion and the judge ultimately doesn't dismiss any counts and the client is still facing a number of offenses, and the choice is, do I go to trial and risk potentially going to prison for all these years, if I lose, or I can take something lesser that maybe gets me out of jail in the meantime, but I got to take that hit and get something on my record. It's a gut-wrenching decision every time that I have to go through that with clients, because you never know what's going to happen at trial. Juries can be unpredictable, and you don't know ultimately what their decision is going to be. It's a very difficult situation. It's hard to say. Each person's decision depends on the circumstances in their life, but it's never easy.
Okay. David, I introduced Izzy as Izzy's coming in. We are looking to start working some more, actually outreach, not just with the Black community, but with the Hispanic community also. Izzy, do you have any questions you might want to ask David?
Well, first of all, I was just wondering if he has some words in Spanish for the Hispanic community, since our TV station is in Spanish half of the time. Hola, David.
Hola, ¿qué tal? Buenas tardes, ¿cómo está? Mucho gusto.
Mucho
Me
gusto.
encantaría hablar con sus televidentes cuando quiera. En español, aquí estoy.
Gracias. Hablas muy bien el español. Pues eres de la Ciudad de México, ¿no?
Nací en México, y luego también estudié cuando estaba en universidad literatura, y todo eso, entonces, porque cuesta trabajo, hay que practicarlo, ¿no?
Claro,
Entonces,
no se nos olvida.
Exacto.
Muy bien, muy bien. ¿Tienes tu plataforma que puedas decirla en español?
Sí, mi plataforma se trata de igualdad de justicia, ¿ok? Yo pienso que cada individuo que vaya a la corte merece el mismo respeto, cortesía y consideración. Y a lo largo de mi carrera como defensor público, me he dedicado a que la gente menos afortunada y la gente de clase trabajadora, incluyendo a inmigrantes, documentados o no, reciban igualdad de justicia. Esa es mi plataforma.
Perfecto. Muchas gracias.
Por nada.
I thank you, Izzy, and I'm excited about the partnership that is needed between the Black and Hispanic community. We have many of the similar problems. There is unity. When there is unity, then we can solve problems for both.
Totally.
So I'm happy to have Izzy coming on our team and looking as we expand our outreach, not just to the Black community, but also to the Hispanic community, because we must be a voice. We must be a voice that is heard if we really want equal justice for all. So thank you again, Izzy, for coming on here. David, I thank you. I believe that we need a breath of fresh air, because folks, change comes sometimes requiring that you move out the old and bring in the new. Because if the old wants to make America great again, if they think the past was the greatest, then we're in trouble, because we need to make America better for all involved. And that will only happen when we have people who come in with an attitude of changing, with the people who understand that there is really systemic racism. Systemic racism is both in the Black community and the Hispanic community. We've just dealt with it a lot longer. And if we work together to smash systemic racism, America as a whole will be better. So again, David, this is the first of a series. I thank you for taking the time to talk to the independent Black voters on Facebook. It is important. Not everybody thinks it is important to talk to our community. And you reached out to me, and you are here talking to us about what's going on with us, who you are, because we are a community of relationships. If we don't know you, we won't vote for you. So it's time that in the next 3 months that we get you to know our community so they will vote for you. This is the Independent Black Voters on Facebook. And now what I'm going to ask to happen, I'm going to ask David, give us your contact information and your quick spiel on why we need to vote for you in English first, and then in Spanish. Then Izzy, I'm going to let you say a few words to the Hispanic community, and then I will sign us off, okay?
All right, sounds great.
Well, sorry,
no,
go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Well, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to speak with you all, and I appreciate all the work that you guys are doing. And to all the voters out there, my campaign slogan is equal justice under the law. It's what I've been fighting for since I started as a lawyer at the Public Defender's Office, and it will be my North Star if I get the honor of being elected to the bench. You can find out more about me on my website, which is negrete4nevada.com. So I appreciate your support. I appreciate your vote in November. Y para mi gente, como estaba diciendo, mi plataforma se trata de igualdad de justicia. Es lo que el guía para lo que he luchado y va a ser mi guía si tengo el honor de ser el próximo juez en este condado. Y pueden ver más de mi campaña en mi sitio, que es negrete4nevada.com. Gracias.
Thank you. Muchas gracias.
You're up, Izzy.
Well, in Spanish or in English, what do you want?
Both.
Both, okay. Well, one of the things that I really need to ask him before he goes, I know we don't have enough time right now, but something that everybody's asking me right now is, what do you think about the idea about ICE abolish ICE?
What do I think about it?
Yeah.
I think it's a very controversial issue, right? And obviously it's not something that would come before the court in the Clark County District Court. It's a federal issue, so it's not something that really would come before the court. I think that obviously this country is founded on immigrants, and honestly, Las Vegas is about welcoming people. That's what we're about. We're about trying to bring people in and trying to be inclusive. That's what I believe. Obviously, borders, you have to respect borders. But I think there's definitely some things that maybe I don't agree with. I can tell you that I personally became a US citizen And I was fortunate that I was able to start out with a green card. And I think that a lot of people want to become citizens, and there's a lot of people who should be citizens. So I think that it's a problem that we have to address, something that's unresolved.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Let me wade in before you finish, Izzy. One of the things we have to understand, in the Black community, we talk a lot about systemic racism. Systemic racism, while we're focusing on the Black community, systemic racism is worldwide. And part of systemic racism is wealth inequality. Many of the people that come to America have come because of systemic racism. They've come because of wealth inequality. They want to live in their nations. They want to live in their countries. And if we in America become what we are in America, and we work with the rest of the world to change this have and have nots, when 1% of the people own the bulk of the wealth in the world, then people who are starving and hungry go to wherever they think there is opportunity. They don't come here because they just want to come here. They come here because they are looking for hope. And if we change this whole greed, it's not capitalist anymore. We have a greed society where there's the have much and the have little to have none. Then we will not see the great migrations that we see. Migrations have always been about opportunity, economic opportunity. Black people left the South to come up north for good paying jobs. People are leaving their countries to come here to survive and not die. So I challenge us as America to not put up walls. I challenge us as America to relook at capitalism, to really relook at the distribution of wealth, to fight hunger, to fight poverty, first in the United States, but then worldwide. And you will not see these migrations happening that we're seeing now. What do you think about that, David?
I think wealth, economic opportunity or lack of opportunity are huge issues when you're dealing with immigration. And like you're talking about, they're a main reason why people immigrate, right? Most people come here to the US, at least from Hispanic countries, in order to get better opportunity economically, right? And so it drives them to come here. And you can understand when you're trying to provide for your family, when you're trying to feed your children and give them a better life, you can relate, you can understand why someone would, number one, take the very dangerous risk of crossing illegally, right? And you can understand why they would take the risk of living in this country in the shadows, because ultimately they still want to be able to try to partake in the American dream, because we are ultimately, how do you get opportunity? You get opportunity when you have freedom and when you have equality. And those are the three ingredients I think that you need. And those are the three main ingredients of our country, right? That's what our country was built on. And so I understand why it attracts a lot of people here. It's a very complicated issue because obviously we can't just have people crossing all over with no process at all. I don't think anybody wants chaos. I think a lot of people would submit to a process to try to get legal status, and you have people that were even brought over when they were young and they had no choice in the matter whatsoever. We have a huge community of dreamers here that never broke the law because they wanted to. They never really made that choice. They were minors at the time. And yet still, they don't get the benefits of citizenship. It's a very complicated issue, but I'm glad that you are paying attention to it.
And let me say something. We speak about equality or built on, that is the biggest lie. We first have to address the true American history. No, it was not built on equality.
Right.
It was built on systemic racism. It was built on one group having the opportunities while other groups toiled and labored in the past. We try to talk about this America dream while we ignore the true history of America. So I have to let that go. We were not built on equality. We were actually built on systemic racism.
I agree with you. I think our ideals, those are our ideals, and we haven't lived up to them, obviously.
Absolutely.
There's a lot more work that we need to do.
Absolutely. That's what we want to tell the world that we are. But if we want to say we are, we need to be we are. We be what we say we are. And there lies the rub. And that's what bothers some people is real history is no, we are not the great country that tamed America. We are the country that came in and we've done some pretty bad stuff
Sure.
to folks to basically in the sake of economics and superiority. So anyway, Izzy, you want to say a couple of words here in English and Spanish, and we're going to take this home real quick. I'll close it out.
All I want to say is that we're very proud to have a young person like David, and also that's he's Hispanic, taking the seat of a judge. He'll definitely going to have our support, our station, and it's amazing to have somebody like him in a position like that. Todo lo que puedo decir es que tener a alguien como él en una posición de poder como su juez sería fabuloso, sería algo para un triunfo para la comunidad hispana. Te apoyaremos en todo lo que podamos nosotros aquí en la estación y que no sea la última vez que nos hablemos antes de noviembre.
Excelente, gracias.
All right, folks, we're almost over on this one. Again, David, much thanks for you to take the time to come out and talk with us. The biggest fear that some people have in here is unity. When we find that the Black community, the Hispanic community, and the white community are all fighting for equal justice, are all fighting to smash systemic racism, are who want America to be not the dream that they claim, but the reality of equal justice, but the reality of equal opportunity, but the reality of loving our brothers no matter what their skin color is. We will then do better. So I am happy to have my first telecast with Izzy, and it just happened to be with David. So as I said, that's a sign. And there are people who will be scared of this sign, but there are other people who will embrace it and say, change is really coming. So I thank you again. This is the Independent Black Voters. Our vote is not free. We must have friends in high places. We must have friends that look like us and friends who don't look like us. We only ask that our agenda is just as important as yours. We will continue to vet the candidates as we come out with an endorsement so that when we win, when they win, we win. Change is coming. Change will come when we become educated voters. Thank you again, David. Thank you again, Izzy. This is the Independent Black Voters signing off.
Thank you.
Thank you. Gracias.
Hasta luego.